Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session. And we really appreciate that you were open to come and join us. By us, I mean the Juneau Human Rights Commission in this session called Addressing Systemic Racism Together. I would like to thank a number of key contributors and participants. So thank you, Senator Keel, for sharing your time with us today. Thank you, UAS, Juliet, Amanda, the organizers, the tech support, for making power and privilege a reality for us and providing for the community a venue to bring knowledge, expertise, and thinking all together in one setting, and giving us an opportunity for searching possibilities for learning and bringing about change. My name is Haifa Furugi, and I'm the chair for the Human Rights Commission, the Juneau Human Rights Commission. And another 3 members of the commission are also present tonight, and they will be your facilitators in the breakout groups. I will let them introduce themselves when we get to that point. The way that our session looks tonight is I will pass the quote unquote mic to Senator Keel, and so that he will give us, he is going to provide some information for us. But the goal today is for us to offer our governing bodies ideas on how to elevate our systems to be more reflective of the diversity of voice and collectives in our community. The Juneau Human Rights Commission submitted a resolution to the City and Borough of Juneau, which was passed and approved in September. And this was a resolution called Recognizing and Embracing the Diversity and Cultural Values of Our Community and Holding it Accountable. With this goal in mind, what we want is for you to offer us ideas about how we can move into the action items of this resolution. And we selected the 3 most poignant ones. I would like to invite Senator Keel now, if you will. He's going to help us understand the formal processes and procedures through which the public voice is canalized to inform the actions of our leaders, politicians, and decision makers. So again, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And Senator Keel, please.
Well, thank you so much, Haifa, and thank you to UAS and the hosts of this year's Power and Privilege Symposium. It's such an important and valuable thing that we do here in Juneau. Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Jesse Keel. It's my privilege to serve as the Alaska State Senator for Senate District Q. That's the northern half of the Southeast Panhandle by population. My district stretches from just north of Petersburg to the Canadian border and over in around Icy Strait to the Gulf of Alaska. Put differently, I am privileged to serve the ancestral lands of the Takuquan, the Okquan people's lands, traditional lands where I stand today, and so many others, the Hunaqquan traditional lands in Glacier Bay from which they were driven out and required to live elsewhere, the Chilkootquan people of Haines, the Jilkatquan, the eternal village of Klukwan, and of course the people of Skagway, which also marks its place in history as the embarkation point where about 3,000 African-American soldiers and engineers built their portion of the Alaska Highway with hand tools while white engineers used power equipment. So I don't necessarily know that a cisgendered, heterosexual, middle-aged white office holder is the right guy to talk about power and privilege. But since the Human Rights Commission invited me, I will try to lend what insights I possibly can. And as Haifa said, we'll take the context of the recent parallel effort. 2 important pieces of legislation passed by the Juneau Assembly, where I used to serve but did not at the time. One, the resolution brought forward by the Human Rights Commission, and the other an ordinance introduced by now former Assembly member Rob Edwardson. And I give thanks to both for their tremendous work. Both those pieces of legislation begin in much the same way. They declare as the official policy of the City and Borough of Juneau that discrimination is not only harmful to individuals and harmful to our economy, but it is undesirable and unjust in its own right. It is a wrong. Systemic racism and systemic discrimination are particularly hard to change, and both the resolution and the ordinance talk about that. They're very hard to see, and they're very hard because they're difficult to see to acknowledge. I'll give you one of my favorite examples. It's something I did not fix, was not able to fix when I was on the Assembly, with two exceptions. Two. Public testimony at the City and Borough of Juneau Assembly is taken at the meeting where the Assembly plans to have its final vote on any given piece of legislation. But the amendments and all the work on that ordinance tend to happen in committees before that meeting where the final vote is taken. And the committees at the Juneau Assembly almost never take public testimony. Now, there are many folks in our community who know it's during that committee process, if they have something they want to talk about, that they ought to pick up the phone and call their assembly members. They ought to, in a non-COVID time, have a cup of coffee together, sit down, or send an email. I have, as a result of that, my time on the Juneau Assembly, most of the Chamber of Commerce board members' phone numbers in my contacts, not because they've done anything wrong, but because they know when to call people who are going to work on legislation that impacts them. But think about the dynamic. By the time public testimony happens on an ordinance, most of the decisions have really been made. Assembly members have argued it and discussed it. They've amended it. They've cast votes. They're on the record, right? Folks who were working two jobs or single parents with tremendous calls on their time and didn't necessarily know when to make that call or send that email, it's awfully late for them to bend the arc of that piece of legislation at the final meeting. It's one of those little things where the institution is built, the way we do things is built in a way that just happens to put a little more power in the hands of those who know the system and have the time to try and influence it early. So when we talk about doing a better job, it's not just because the field's a little bit tilted. It's because some of these things are built in, and institutions are hard to change. So it's incumbent on us to build anti-racism and anti-discrimination into the institutions and organizations where we work. It runs against the current, right? There's a natural human tendency once you have power to hold it. I mean, think about the US Constitution. People fought a war to overthrow a monarchy. They were pretty sure they were right about the structure of government and what it ought to be. So they made it really hard to change once they had a constitution they could adopt, right? Resistance to change is built into institutions. Not everybody fought a war, but the same dynamic holds. So Mr. Edwardson's ordinance creates a committee. It is charged with examining every piece of legislation that comes forward to look at whether it improves the situation with regard to institutional discrimination, makes it worse, or doesn't touch it. The Human Rights Commission's resolution commits the city to ongoing efforts, to town halls, to internal examination of how the city does its work, and to recruiting more people and more diverse people into all the city does. You've literally taken two institutions, one you created and one you already had, and devoted them to that anti-discrimination work. Not surprisingly, it's a little early, I think, to hang up the big Mission Accomplished banner. We've got a lot of work left to do. And I think when we talk about what's next and how we decide what's next, it's important to look just a little bit at how we got to where we are. These Juneau efforts took a huge lift from elected officials, pushed along in a few cases, and backed up in many more cases by the community. Who in the community? By the folks we very seldom hear from, right? The folks who, most of them I don't have in my contacts, who came out this last summer in response to national issues, the murder of George Floyd, the police killing of Breonna Taylor, and others. And they protested in large numbers. And during those protests, we heard about the issues they faced here in our own community, right? The things they faced in Juneau schools, the issues they had with Juneau police, the concerns they had with treatment in the private sector. Our neighbors opened a lot of eyes. And that's hard to do. That's a big job. Because as we heard Professor Twitchell say just a few minutes ago, people who work hard naturally resist the idea that we had it easier than anyone else. I worked hard. I couldn't have had anybody give me an unfair break. It's not that they were unfair to me, but they were unfair to others for sure. And people tend not to believe they're doing the wrong thing, right? Aristotle wrote this, how many thousand years? A couple of thousand years ago. All men's actions, of course, he used the gendered pronoun, all men's actions are aimed toward the good. People who live our lives without conscious malice naturally push back on the idea that the way we live, the way we've always lived, may not be the best and most just way there is, may not in fact be just at all. So the effort to open eyes will be constant. The mission is not yet accomplished. But in the wake of this community outcry, some of our elected leaders on the assembly took the opportunity. Not all of them originally had active anti-racism work on their city agendas. Others did, but they had lacked the opportunity, the open door to go through for big moves like the ones we're talking about today. Oh, they'd worked on issues that are critical. They'd worked on access to childcare and its affordability, on education opportunities, on equity, on environmental justice. But it took that giant community push to open the door for a more concerted and direct effort at anti-racism and anti-discrimination. And I just want to stress that making change in institutions like ours isn't either or, good leaders or a strong community. This is a participatory, representative republic form of government. You have to have both. So if you accept that analysis, and hopefully you're not actively writing arguments against in the chat box, it gives us two questions. How do we choose the next steps? And how do we get them accomplished? So we could spend the rest of our afternoon coming up with a list of places we need to do anti-racism work and come up with something as tall as the wall and easily become overwhelmed. This is a big job. Sustained work and effort are important. They also happen to be exhausting. So keep in mind, if we don't tear down every barrier today, it's still worth tearing one down today and starting on the next one tomorrow, as long as we don't put down the work. Just as an elected official dedicated to doing anti-racism and anti-discrimination work also needs to write a city budget and figure out which of the countless public works needs we have to prioritize in the limited budget we have, and wrestle with tensions between environmental protection and economic growth. And just as activists need to feed the kids every night and take a walk in the woods now and then to stay mentally healthy and call grandma sometimes. Sorry, I'm realizing I didn't call my mother this weekend. Okay, so elected officials fall down on that stuff too. You can't spend all your time doing this all the time. So how do we choose? Well, let me suggest that how we choose starts with who. Now, I know this may sound untimely because we're just moving out of an election cycle, but I promise it's not. A participatory, representative republic form of government means the representatives in that really matter. Elections are when the die is cast. And when hot metal starts flowing, getting poured, you will either get the shape of a sword out of that die or the shape of a plowshare. Now, the Bible tells us you can reshape one into the other, but that's a lot more work for the activists than polishing the edges when the shape's already there. So if you have a preference between spears and pruning hooks, go out and get the horticulture fan elected. Better yet, run for office yourself and be the arborist you want to see in the world. I know that's a terribly tortured metaphor, but I had to make a joke somewhere, or I'd put you all to sleep. Here's the thing. Running for office can be scary, but I'll tell you what, you're spending your afternoon at a power and privilege symposium. Somebody already called your name on the internet today. They don't even know who you are, I promise. You're not bleeding. You'll be okay. And the fact is, most of the people who are going to disagree with you will keep it completely civil. So don't let 2 dozen, 3 dozen mean kids on Facebook stop you from stepping forward and serving tens of thousands of people whose lives you can make better as one of the representatives in our form of government. Okay, recruiting video ends. Let's move on to the what. before I get off the recruiting video, I promise it's not too early. Put the word out now you're planning to run. Start building coalitions and groups of people to help you right now. It's not too soon. So what do we work on next, right? A tremendous number of things need doing. I'll tell you a short little story. I was in college. This was the second half of the 1990s. I'm taking a course in gender and international political economy. We've just finished a deep dive into some US industrial export-import policies in Latin America, the effects they're having on local communities, and how they came to be, how they're in place, and whose interests were served. And the professor said, all right, so now we've analyzed that, we've got a good grip on it. What do we do next? What's your prescription for making things better? And one of my classmates said, well, what we need to do is get patriarchy out of the equation. And then and they proceeded to lay out a set of steps. And I'm thinking to myself, what a great set of steps. Amen. Can you take me back to step one, though, and how we dismantle the patriarchy? Just first. Wasn't much of an answer on that one, right? And it really kept us from getting to step two. So, achievable steps, specific goals. And I think you've heard from so many presenters at today's symposium about specific things that can be done, one after the other, after the following one, after the next, to make things better. Give you an example. In 1993, Juneau had a mayor who wanted to prevent discrimination in employment against LGBTQ individuals, right? The backdrop of our community was very different then. The way the general populace felt about what in those days they called gay rights was not what it is today. And as far as Mayor Botello could get was an ordinance that protected city workers against discrimination in hiring and firing and pay based on any qualification other than job merit. Didn't say gay, didn't say lesbian, didn't say trans. But that's what he could accomplish, and we took a step forward. And so you look to today, or to a more modern era, in 2016, we were able in Juneau to pass an ordinance that protected people from discrimination based on race, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, religion, marital status. And it didn't just apply to public employment, it applied to housing, employment in the public and private sectors, real estate, credit. It was doable because the opportunity was created by changes in our community, right? That was also the year that we funded and required body cameras for JPD. In 2020, after a statewide voter initiative that meant everybody who got a PFD was registered to vote, unless they actively opted out, the Juneau Assembly went to vote by mail. When you put those things together, they got within kissing distance of true universal suffrage. Now that is a step toward progress and everybody having a say in our community and our society. That was also the year after the vote by mail decision that both the resolution and the ordinance we're talking about were passed. Each one of those steps took elected officials willing to work on anti-discrimination and a community ready to push. They were concrete steps. Some of them didn't get quite as far as originally envisioned, but they were achievable. And most of the folks who did the pushing are not the ones that most elected officials have in their contacts. None of those things single-handedly ended a colonial mentality toward Alaska Native peoples. None of those things dismantled patriarchy in its entirety or extinguished unjust discrimination, but they all moved us forward. Those are the criteria. Those are the things to focus on, I submit to you, as we work together, general public and elected officials, to do the work of anti-racism and anti-discrimination in our communities. And with that, I know I've gone just a minute or two longer than I was supposed to. Haifa, let me turn back to you to talk about how we're going to split into our breakout sessions. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. It's been a privilege.
Thank you so much, Senator Keel. Thank you. It was wonderful to understand what are those venues that we have as public to connect with all of you who are going to make decisions for us. The way that our evening is going to look like is that Amanda is going to divide us into 3 work groups. And you will be facilitated by Ivan Bailey, Angel Collins, and Brick Townsend, who are the 3 other members present tonight. We are a total of 5 in the Human Rights Commission. These 3 members will be the one facilitating each of the groups. And the idea is that it's going to be brainstorming. You will be introduced to what is the focus of your work. And then we want to just gather your suggestions and your ideas and everything that is going to help us move forward and present your contributions to the Assembly for their consideration. I know that it's going to be amazingly engaging and productive. And we will be doing that for approximately 20 minutes. We are being consistently reminded that your time is precious, and we want to honor that. We want to honor you as an audience and also the presenters that are coming after us. So you will have 20 minutes. We will come back again to the whole group, and we'll move from there. Thank you very much again, and see you in 20-some minutes.
Great. I'm going to break everybody into groups. I know there were a few questions, and I will just kindly ask people to hold those questions until the very end, and hopefully we can get to them. All right, so the rooms are open. It should be, oh, hold on a second. So you should be getting an invitation to join a breakout room. And if you can, please go ahead and select that. No? There's still quite a few people here. Let's see. Are folks seeing a message to join a breakout room?
I don't see.
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't either.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
haven't
well,
yet.
Let's see. Hold on one second. Oh, I see. I see. Okay, there we go. It might take a minute for these to start going through, but they are just, I have to individually select who is going to the breakout rooms. There we go.
Can we just be our own breakout room?
As much as I would love that, I think the facilitators will do a much better job. Thank you for your patience. Almost there, almost there. Britta, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, I think this is everybody in this particular breakout room.
Okay. Okay, we're in a breakout room. Great.
Yep.
Hi everyone, my name's Britta and I am a member of the Juneau Human Rights Commission. I've been on the commission for about 4 years. I heard about it. My husband, Zane Jones, sits on a couple city commissions and he saw that there was an opening on this one. It was not ever something I thought I would be eligible for or that I even knew about. And so it was very nice to be part of this commission, to hear about it and to find something that fit with my values. It's been a work. And so one of the things about the commission is it's kind of transformed over years. And as we stand, it's educational, and we've started to become more active. So this is new for us. It's new for my time on the commission. We developed this resolution, and it was edited and adopted as such. And so I'm going to share my screen. The focus of this breakout session, can you see my Google Doc that I'm sharing?
Yeah, it looks like it's just half of, oh yeah, there we go.
Okay. Oh, and then one other thing, we just wanted to acknowledge the agreements of the Power and Privilege Symposium, as well as centering voices of marginalized. And so if that's you, we hope that this is a safe space and that you feel like your voice is being centered in this conversation. And if it's not, just make sure that we allow for time for those voices to be centered. So the part of Resolution 2899 that we're focusing on in this work session is B, commits to scheduling regular town hall meetings to consult with the community to review and update the equal rights anti-discriminatory policy pursuant to CBJ Code 41.05 to reflect the commitments made through this resolution. So I'm going to go to that code. For those who aren't familiar, it's the equal rights policy for the city. And so I need to make this small so I can read it. So 41.05 is the policy of the CBJ to eliminate unlawful discrimination based on race, color, age, religion, sex, familiar status, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or national origin. Such discrimination poses a threat to the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of the CBJ, of the city and borough. And so then it's got some subcategories such as discrimination in employment, discrimination in the provision of housing or realty, discrimination in public accommodations, lawful practices, unlawful intimidation or retaliation, aiding, abetting, or coercing a violation, cause of action, and then there's some definitions. And so if we go back to this document where I'm going to take notes, there's a link to the code. You can Google it. But how we understand this is that the CBJ is committing to hold meetings to review this code. And then we kind of brainstorm some assumptions. Assumption 1, meetings are not yet being held. Assumption 2, meetings have not necessarily been historically accessible. And under this, is there proper notification, timing, and posting of these meetings? And then is there proper invitation? So not just informing, but intentional about participation and encouraging participation. I think Senator Keel touched on this quite a bit in a really powerful way. And then the assumption 3, with COVID, not everyone can attend because it's unsafe. And so it's up to the City and Borough of Juneau to address barriers. So the question that we had for you all is, how do you suppose the CBJ should do this? And so I'm going to collect these, and then we're going to create a document and pass it along. If it's helpful, we can have a little bit of conversation before we kind of dive into how do we do this. And you can go, I don't know if anyone's trying to talk, but you can take yourself off mute. Am I here? I'm going to stop share to see if anybody's here. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. Is anybody in this chat, in this work group? I'll check chat.
I am. I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. And we do have 8 participants in this group. I wonder if we can't hear them for some tech reason. I wonder. Okay, everybody became, oh no, everybody's is muted right now. I wonder if it is.
The chat, and I don't see anybody typing in there.
Yeah. Let me connect with Amanda and let her know. I'm going to take my video so I can speak with her and mute myself. But so that you know,
I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on.
I thought that it might be something central, but obviously it isn't because I can mute and unmute myself. So I'm not sure what's going on. But you have 8 participants, including us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so I'm going to type a message. Somebody would have written something if they couldn't speak, don't you think so?
I think so. I'm not seeing anything in the chats.
Okay, let's see what she says. Okay. Oh, Amanda's in another group right now. I think Amanda went to another group. She must be helping Ivan. Oh, yeah. Evan Gordon, are you there? Cynthia Moore? I'm not sure. I see their names, but I can't hear anyone, Britt.
Yeah, same here. That's a bummer.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah, nobody's responding to chat in the text, so leads
Yeah.
me to believe it's a technical issue.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I asked Amanda to let me in her group. See what happened. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. I'll be back shortly if I can.
Okay.
Anything happen, Britt? 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 Are you there? Can I help? Britt, are you there? Hello?
I think we're just waiting on a few more folks to come back from their breakout room. So give me 1 minute while everybody else comes back, okay?
Okay. Maybe at this time we can go into reporting of each of the facilitators, the information that they collected in their group. But I think that Britt's group wasn't able to work together, correct, Britt? Did you ever connect with the rest of the group? No, okay. I think there was some technical problem that we couldn't connect with the group. Yeah.
Well, that would explain why we were just talking to ourselves.
Yeah, not sure what happened there. I'm really sorry. Sometimes technology seems to have a mind of its own.
We did identify housing, being able to buy your own house and not having land and housing stolen from you as an area of need now and in recent history in Juneau.
Mhm. Were you able to enter into the chat room your suggestions, or it didn't work either? Do you know if the chat worked for you? Just in case you guys entered something, we can collect
We
that.
missed that part of the instructions. We
Yeah.
did put in, I did put in the theater production of history, the one about living in the flats. So we got something into the chat.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, are we all back? Can we move into group reporting?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Angel, would you like to report from your group, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So we had a really good discussion. It really wasn't enough time, and not every voice was heard. And of course, you know, in these situations, not everyone who has an idea would wish to speak them. So I would love if there is a way for them to connect with us at some other point, that they can do so. But we talked about this specific action item in that anti-racism resolution, which was that the assembly should commit to extending invitations for CBJ committee vacancies to historically underrepresented populations, including Alaska Native, African American, and Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islanders, to ensure key voices are brought in as architects of change, as it is only through such inclusive participation that new directions can emerge. And despite the fact that we included all of those different populations, those are not the do all or end all and be all of the populations. It's including Indigenous and every other group that exists in the city and borough. And so I asked two questions of the group. What are the barriers that constrain participation of underrepresented voices in the boards and commissions? And what are ways that these barriers can be overcome? And so we came up with a few things. One was incentive, is there pay? Because low income or single and dual income individuals aren't always able to participate in things for free. Another barrier is fear of judgment because of your ethnicity, your sex, or any other barrier, because the city is so close-knit, there could be other issues that if you put yourself out there, someone might bring up, and the fear of judgment based on your past exists. Fear of the built-in systems, because there is microaggression, systemic racism, other things in our systems themselves, the fear of those things built into the system might hold you back. Time management, because if you are working with your kids to, help inform the younger generations of your own cultural heritage, how are you also able to participate in something outside of that? Even technology, we had someone have a microphone issue and they were only able to ask their question or say their comment through the chat, but they weren't, if you don't have the technology to participate, then you aren't able to participate. And some of the ways that the barriers can be overcome would be, maybe giving everyone an implicit association test, which shows you where you are on the spectrum of implicit biases against so many different anti-issues. Maybe the setup of the committees could be structured differently. Maybe we come up with a way to incentivize, maybe not financially always, but some other way to incentivize participation. And then a suggestion was a synchronous and asynchronous, like maybe having a Google Doc, or if anybody uses Marco Polo, something similar to that, where you can put your input in when you are able to, and other people can read it when they are able to. Or how do they even know the process? Is the process accessible to them? How are people aware of what it takes to be part of boards and commissions? Where is it advertised? Is it offered in other languages? And how do they know that these opportunities exist? And even the work that the boards and commissions do, and what it means to the community. Why should they care what the commission and board does? So that information is what people really care to know about before they can even consider whether or not they want to put themselves out there to be part of a board and commission as an underrepresented voice.
Thank you very much, Angel. Ivan, would you like to go next or now, please?
Sure. So the breakout group that I had, we talked about section C, specifically retaliation. And I'll read that section, which I didn't get an opportunity to, I forgot. But section C of the ordinance reads, commits to extensive through internal audits, examinations, and corrections of discriminatory factors in its administrative structures, we're talking the city, especially to identify whether citizens and employees, including but not limited to Alaska Native, African American, Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and Pacific Islanders are afforded opportunities to make good faith claims of discrimination free from the fear of retaliation. So retaliation is what we discussed, that we touched on, and we really didn't have a whole lot of time to get a lot of input, but we did make sure to give folks the city clerk's address, email address to send comments, also the chat to put any questions. Just feel free to reach out to the JHRC to see when we meet, to see when you can come, and it's open to the public. And kind of to reiterate what Senator Keel was speaking on, not to be afraid, because this affects all of us, to be able to be part of the decision-making of our city. It's really important, I think, and it can be done. It can be done. One thing I do want to speak on in terms of retaliation and the wording, good faith claims, I didn't get a chance to talk on that. When I worked as a federal equal employment counselor, I counseled years ago. I counseled a case. I was dealing with a case out in New Mexico. I covered 7 states, including Alaska, as a equal employment counselor. This one instance where this gentleman who had applied for a job, for a promotion, didn't get it, so he filed a discrimination case. And looking over his case, after talking with his supervisors, looking at his evaluations, his previous evaluations, looking at his conduct, this individual really wasn't the best person to with his coworkers, with his work. There were a lot of factors that were there. And it was basically, it came down, he didn't get this promotion because of his own poor performance. But in response to him not receiving this promotion, he filed a discrimination suit, which was ultimately dismissed. So that's an example of what is not necessarily a good faith claim, because there wasn't anything that he could demonstrate beyond the fact that he just didn't get the job, and it was because he was such and such. But looking and actually doing a thorough examination of his previous performance, what his previous supervisors had said, his coworkers were saying, the quality of his work, it was evident there was a reason why he didn't receive that promotion, and had nothing to do with the initial claim that he made. So those good faith claims is what this ordinance, this section C, speaks to, that anyone who actually is advocating for themselves or for someone else for discrimination should not and should be able to do that free of retaliation. And I believe with the task force that's soon to be brought up and by the city, that there'll be the mechanism put in place to actually deal this, to address this in a thorough manner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan. We have a couple of minutes, and I just want to please ask those of you who were assigned to Britt Thompson's group to take advantage of, to give us the opportunity to hear your voice. And if you email city clerk, one word, @juneau.org, and please offer your ideas and suggestions. We would love to hear what would be your contributions to the process that was on her group. And using the words of Senator Keel, we are all encouraged and reminded that we need to move forward and work together, because as he said, it is possible. We just have to go up the path step by step, and in a mindset of collaboration and trying to avoid a sense of discrimination that is felt right now in the political environment that we are living. With today, we wanted to introduce you of how to get the public voice taking advantage of the political process, and at the same time, simultaneously, how to have conversations that lead to productive work and goodwill in the community. I'm not sure if Senator Keel is still present and he would like to give us closing words for us. Thank you, Senator, for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Haifa, and thank you so much to everyone who's attended and participated in the breakout sessions. Thank you, Angel. Your group's report was excellent and really specific. Some actionable things there that I know the Commission will take on to the Assembly, and that to me is the key. You have good people working with you and for you. It doesn't take a movement that brings 1,000 people out in the street to make a change. Never hurts, but it takes the work and the good people working with you and for you. It's a little bit of both. You can make this change happen, especially with specific actionable things that are going to make a difference and make it better, step at a time. So thank you so much for being here, for engaging in the conversations, and I look forward to joining you in doing the work.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.